XYZ because I don't want something to happen back to me. That's what we're talking about there. The difference between madness and folly, as far as I can tell here, both reject God. Madness is just rejecting God and trying to drive the car as fast as you can off the cliff. This would probably be an apt description for our day and age. More madness than folly. The folly is definitely there. They rejected God, but we're also seeing who can get to the cliff the fastest. Okay. Anyways, I digress. Let's keep going. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. So this is something we need to consider. Rulers are only going to do what has already been done. It's all been tried and done before. And I find this kind of funny. We have, especially in our nation, the United States of America, but in most of the Western world, this constant desire to try things that have been done before and have always and always and always failed. Any sort of wisdom of man is going to fail, but there is something about trying it over again, saying we didn't do it right the first time. In particular, I see this with the push towards socialism, communism type forms of government. And big reasons why I speak against those is A, it has led to the largest mass murder of mankind in history. Also because they are built on the tenet that God is not real. They are built on atheistic assumptions every single time. And we're definitely saying that nowadays. But what do you get? You get people that say, well, the past didn't try it right the first time. Oh, no, I'm pretty sure the USSR gave it a really good college try. So has North Korea, China, and many other places. So let's not delude ourselves. What can the king do? Only what has already been done. This is just another way of saying there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, continuing on. Verse 13. Good morning, Shane. Sorry, you weren't seeing the video there for a second. I'm definitely live. I can see myself. I know that's kind of odd, but I know I'm on the screen, so we'll keep going. All right, let's try this again then. Maybe that's what that text was about. Nope. Okay. So let's keep going here. Verse 13. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, as there is more gain in light than in darkness. So when Solomon speaks, and this, by the way, goes for the Proverbs, if you ever want to study them, the Psalms as well, wisdom is associated with godliness. Okay. So wisdom, think morality. What other kind of words can we throw in there? Wisdom, righteousness, godliness, those type of things. Whereas foolishness is ungodliness. Foolishness would be a rejection of God and these type of things. Okay. Good morning, Arliss. So all of these type of things can be included in our thoughts, but really, especially when you look at the book of Proverbs, the fool is the one who says in his heart, there is no God. That is the definition of a fool according to God. Now, let's keep going on. So the wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart that this also is vanity. For of the wise as of the fool, there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come, all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. So I hated life because what is done under the sun was grievous to me. For all is vanity and a striving after the wind. Good morning, Shirley and Connie. Sorry if there was a little bit of a lag there in the video stream for whatever reason. I see everybody's comments coming up right now. I apologize. Something must be going on with the software or online. So anyway, going back to this, what do I gain is Solomon's question. The fool dies and the wise man dies. Both end up in the same place. The temptation, and I think the bait that our world today has taken, is then to fall into some sort of nihilism. And just to completely, very quickly summarize that for you, of course, it is a much bigger teaching of the world than we can go into in a morning devotion setting. But nihilism, the idea that nothing really matters. It's just death. So, everything is meaningless. us. Kind of like Ecclesiastes, at least from the world's perspective. But that's not where Solomon leaves us. Let's keep going. I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. By the way, it's interesting that Solomon mentions this. We know that Solomon, one of his great flaws in life, he had hundreds of wives. This was partly how they made alliances and treaties in the ancient world. It was partly also because of his just lust for the flesh and the like. And he would have had numerous children. So he's looking around and saying, all this stuff has got to go to somebody. I can't hold on to it forever. He who dies with the most toys doesn't win. He just has a lot of junk that the family has to sort out later. Anyway, so Solomon's realizing this, and he's realizing there's no guarantee that whoever comes next will be wise or foolish. There is a bit of one. It does depend a little bit on how we raise our children and some other things that go on with them in their lives. But the truth is, nobody knows the sum of a person's life, whether it will be completely good or evil, whether it be well remembered or ill remembered, until the person dies. You got to go to the end of the play to see how it will end, so to speak. So this is Solomon's point. Verse 20. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun. Because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. So even in the night, you're still full of vanity and toil and anxiety and worry, even though that's not getting you anywhere, right? This is one, I guess, from a worldly perspective, one of the reasons that Jesus says, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow has enough worries of its own. But instead, we choose to spin our wheels over and over and over again, especially at times where it's not helping. And then we sit there and say, well, that was foolish. Why did I do that? Well, and then we do it again, right? So it's like we never learn the lesson. This goes for me too, by the way. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after the wind. All right. The key to understanding this, and we're going to go back through a little bit of this, for to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge, and then this is the key, joy. We can have wisdom and knowledge as far as the world is concerned. I realize that it would be an unwise thing to put investments in this thing versus in this thing. You name it, right? We have some of these wisdoms. It just has come from being passed down from people who understood the Bible usually, but we might have knowledge, right? I can go to school, I can learn my ABCs, my science, and all these type of things, and I could have general knowledge of how things work. But to have joy, this is also a gift from God. In order to have joy in something, it's going to require us to realize that this world is not exactly how it all shall be. It will all be made new. And I talk about having joy and trying to find joy in as much as possible, in everything that I possibly can, because I realize that all of this will pass away, and the newness of God's creation and the new heaven, new earth will come. So we have joy in whatever we are doing at this time, realizing we're serving God, we're serving our neighbor, we're standing against the works of darkness, all of these type of things. And we're going to talk about how we can capture some of this and seek God's gift of joy. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Otherwise, all you're doing is gathering and giving things away. So why not just gather and give it all away? Because the world tells you need to hold on to it, right? Or whatever reason we come up with in our head. Let's also talk, going back here. Right here in verse 18 and following, that he's going to have to give everything back to somebody who knows how they will use it. We do want, as Christian parents in particular, to leave a legacy to our children. That is a good thing, to continue building the family to the glory of God. We do have to realize that we don't always have control over these things. We like to. We want to control things as much as we possibly can. The problem is one can't always do that forever and ever and ever. This is one, not always, but one of the big reasons we have big inheritance battles and fights, because who gets what, how, why, when, who's responsible. All of those things go together. But we have to also realize that there's a part in us, a time where things are out of our control. And we can get mad at that, right? But I think one of the things that Solomon is maybe teaching us here is there's actually very, 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 very little in our life that is actually in our control. We like to pretend that we're in control of things. The truth is, ultimately speaking, we can eat and we can toil. We have a little bit of control over that, but that's about it. So that's what I want to revisit here for a second. Being honest about our dependency. I think this is one of the things that Solomon is calling us to. We have this world around us, and we control very little of it. Even the things that we toil for seem to either slip through our fingers, do things that are contrary to what we want them to do, or sometimes work against us. Sometimes everything works out swimmingly and goes exactly according to plan, and we rejoice and give thanks to God when we have those blessings. But we need to be honest that we're in control of very little, which gives us another thing to think about. If we are in control of very little, and that goes for me and my neighbors, and I'm talking about physical location neighbors here, then who is? This gets us into conversation about having meaningful faith-based conversations with people. A lot of times people ask me, Pastor, how do I have a conversation with my unbelieving child, my unbelieving neighbor, my unbelieving coworker, or whoever it might be? Eventually, hopefully within our relationship, you have to get to a point to ask very pointed and hard questions that are not easy to squirm out of. People will still squirm out of them, don't get me wrong, but we just need to ask the basic questions. So how's that working out for you is one of my favorites. But the other is, how are you really in control of that? What are you really thankful for? And why are you thankful for it? The other question that we need to ask when we're having the beginnings of meaningful Christian conversation, faith-based conversation, is we need to start asking questions about standards. And I think this goes to our world today. I've already kind of mentioned the difference between madness and folly, and that we find our world that we live in right now to be more on borderline of madness than just folly. People are going off the cliff and trying to go against God's design in every way, shape, and form. And nobody's really pressing the brakes and trying to figure out why. So the question we have to start asking then is, by what standard? We have morals. We are trying to enforce rules and laws. We see this especially with gender issues, where we're trying to enforce a code of speech and ways to talk and do these type of things. But by what standard? This is a big thing that we have to ask ourselves. Why is your morality or your rules or laws are any better than mine? That's going to get to a much deeper question that you're going to have to try not to squirm out of. So somebody might say, well, more people agree with me. We go the old democracy way, right? 51% agree with me, 49% disagree, so I win. Except you still have a very large portion of people that are very much in disagreement with you. You're not really winning. You're just forcing a totalitarianism over someone else. Also, if we start asking the question, by what standard? Where does morality come from? Where does wisdom come from? What's the difference between wisdom, madness, and folly? And we're asking the question, by what standard? You have to start coming up with a basis for morality. If we exclude God from the conversation and we go to the idea that we are meaningless atoms that have been joined together because of a huge friction that caused a massive explosion, bringing everything into existence over billions of years or something of this nature, you have to ask the question then, by what standard? Why is any morality acceptable? Why can't my morality or my choices be acceptable? And this is what we're really dealing with nowadays. However, as soon as you start to lay truth claims to certain things, you are now laying a standard that you have to be able to defend. We believe that our standards of morality are given to us from God, that they have been programmed into the creation, into our nature, and who we are. The problem with this, then, is when we go against God's design, we are going to see things fall apart. This gets back to being honest about our dependency. When we choose not to be honest with our dependency, we see things fall apart. When we try to change things against God's design, we start to see things fall apart. And a lot of times we're sitting there holding the basket saying, why did this happen? This was supposed to work. Everybody agreed with me, and none of it worked. This gets back to that whole question of nihilism. When we treat everything as if nothing matters, then nothing truly does matter, although we're trying to say it does. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So, what are some practical ways then to start looking from what we've seen and to search for God's wisdom, joy in life and in our toil, and also to have knowledge of who He is? In other words, how do we stop foolishness, unbelief in God? And then how do we keep ourselves, as much as humanly possible, away from madness? I got at least 3 suggestions for you today for you to consider. First, and this is one of my favorites, although some people will probably say, well, that's really difficult, I don't want to do that. Well, don't knock it until you really have given it a good college try. Learn to sing the Psalms. And I mean the entire Psalms, not just the favorite verses that a lot of modern Christian music wants to teach. Sing the songs, and I do mean sing. We need to learn to sing even when it's kind of awkward to do so. Unfortunately, there's many things in our life that keep us from singing. One of the chief is auto-tune. Everybody on the radio sounds perfect. We don't sound perfect, and therefore we think we shouldn't sing. That's not how the world works. There's many opportunities in different ways that you can sing the psalms. But the Psalms are very gritty. They're earthy. They deal with human emotions and complaints and joy and happiness and everything in between. When we learn to sing all of the Psalms, including the imprecatory Psalms, where we ask God to punish our enemies, when we learn to sing all of them, you have a much deeper foundation for understanding how we can find joy even in the midst of the calamities of this world. If I can make a few suggestions, at least of where to get started, of course, you can start singing or chanting the Psalms as we have in our Lutheran service book in the very front. If you need to learn how to do that, I can always sit down and teach you how to do that myself. Other things you can do is look for really good old hymns based on Psalms. A Mighty Fortress is Our God, for example, from Martin Luther, to some of Isaac Watts' hymns. I think he did a rendition of Psalm 110, for example, although I cannot think of its name. Modern Christian music that maybe might be a little bit more appealing for some and learning to sing the Psalms, try My Soul Among Lions. They have done a really good job of singing the entire psalm and not just the fun parts or the parts that make us feel really good. They sing all of them. So that's just a few examples there. But try it. Let those songs and song form permeate your life and give it a try to sing. You'll be surprised how it's always relevant to wherever you are in life right now. Next thing, read Christian books, or at least a Christian book written before the 1950s. Too much of modern Christian thought is about pop psychology, and it has its place, I suppose, maybe in some areas, but this is not how the church has spoken for a very long time. The more and more I read Christian authors from before the 1950s, the more I realize they were very prophetic in seeing the madness that we have currently in our nation. It is very helpful, sometimes even therapeutic, to look through what they said about these things so that we know where we should go back to. So read some of the old classics, read really, really old ones for extra credit, and you will be surprised where you see God's wisdom and joy in life start coming back forward. Finally, and this is the big one that I've mentioned many times in different ways, but I'm going to mention it in yet another different way. Start removing the secular voices from your life. This is usually best by just turning off the TV, turning off the news. You can turn off the radio, whatever show you're listening to, or the podcast, because oftentimes the secular voice keeps leading you back to the secular wisdom and madness of the age. You're just going to go into seeing death and meaninglessness at the end. Try instead to listen to things that are uplifting. Try looking at things that were, again, meant for instruction and wisdom and integrity in life. For example, in my family, when we choose movies, many of you know we usually have a movie night with our kids as a family on Friday evenings. We try to find movies that teach different lessons of the Christian faith, not maybe explicitly, maybe, oh, boom, in your face, do this, say as a Veggie Tales or something like that. But we can try different movies in life that show us courage, real courage, not just action for the sake of action, that show us things that are truly funny, not just slapstick comedy that we have more and more nowadays. Try movies that were also made before, again, about 1970, and you'll start to find some of them. There's also some very good modern movies. The Chronicles of Narnia have recently been redone, at least 3 of the books. You can learn a lot about our Lord from those movies or the books. Try those out loud. So remove the secular voices as much as possible and fill them with things of God. Those are some suggestions for you. Again, when it comes to reflecting on life and seeing the meaningless around us, it's not going to be very helpful if we just take meaningless voices about whatever pop thing is going on right now and keep filling our ears with them. It's fun in the moment. Maybe it seems like an escape from reality. But ultimately, I find, at least in my conversations with others, causes a lot of anxiety and worry. So all things to think about and consider. Removing secular voices from our life, and I'll go out and say it here as a Christian preacher, means we should probably also remove some of the most grievous secular voices from our life. We are being crammed with ideologies that are against God and against true religion, and we need to be aware of that. We need to be aware that when we do turn on the TV, we are bombarded by sexual images left and right, and some of them are more grievous than others at times. We also are being crammed with a whole bunch of different ideologies, from the LGBTQIA plus ampersand number sign, whatever it is, and these are also against God's design. And what we find ourselves having problems with is it becomes normalized. I realize this myself as I just see commercials and the like, and things don't faze me as much as they used to. They're starting to become normalized. So watch where those secular voices are coming into our life. Now, the big one that always gets me in trouble, and people get upset with me for saying, but again, I can only see where things are going and only proclaim the truth. Removing secular voices from our life, especially in the life of our children, possibly grandchildren, very well might mean, and I'm even serious from even our local area, removing our children from the public school, where they are only going to get the secular voice. We send our kids to Caesar schools and are surprised when they come back as Romans. Let's stop being surprised. What else do we think we're going to get? We have to be careful where all these things are. Otherwise, the wisdom, the joy that Solomon's talking about, very little of that we actually get under the sun, is going to be robbed from us before we even understand what wisdom and knowledge are. Okay? Now, all things to think about. But I think this is where Ecclesiastes shines, especially where it shows our dependency. You're going to get filled with wisdom and knowledge from somewhere. Maybe it's not really wisdom. You're going to be filled with ideas. Where are they going to come from? Okay, that's what I got for you all today. If you got a prayer request or the like, go ahead and put those down below. I think I have my additions here. Let's do some updates. We are now under a winter storm watch, very likely to convert to a warning. Big things coming here. So as I said, tomorrow around noon, we will make a decision about Wednesday activities, Tuesday evening activities, because there is so much happening right now. I'm just looking right now at my Wonderground app on my phone. It's looking like, at least for Lakefield, Minnesota, Lake Park slightly different, but at least for Lakefield, they're saying Tuesday 4 inches of snow, Wednesday 12 inches of snow, and Thursday 1 inch of snow. You can do the math on that. And then Lake Park is a little bit less, like 3 inches, 4 inches less. So, hey, you got that going for you. Sioux Valley is about halfway in between. So you do the math for our lake regions and figure out where you lie. So that's kind of what's coming up. With that being said, it is very likely things are going to have to change around, but we will make that decision tomorrow. So with that being said, we still, as of this exact moment, are planning for our chili and cinnamon roll cook-off. You can see some of the trophies right behind me right here. You have a chance of winning those. Please consider making a chili and entering it into the contest. We do need more to be entered in. We do have celebrity judges from the community ready to come out and see who has the best. Not to mention, there will be a popular choice trophy. That's the black one right behind me right now. Everybody who wants to come, even if you don't enter a chili, you can taste and vote for your favorite and your cinnamon rolls, and there will be a popular choice category. You might even win both. Who knows? So also, Ash Wednesday service, as of right now, is still planned to go around 7:15, depending on when we're done with the chili cook-off, here at Trinity Lutheran Church in Sioux Valley, Minnesota. And my preaching topic is Joseph, Man of Dreams. That's who we're going to try to be talking about starting this Ash Wednesday. Okay, finally, just the last caveat to all that. Should we have to cancel the chili cook-off, cinnamon roll cook-off, we will try to reschedule it at a future date. That's why I'm trying to give you at least 24 hours in advance notice. The second thing, if we are going to cancel tomorrow, I am going to try to post my Ash Wednesday sermon. It will be in this exact setting, me speaking this way. So at least that's out there and people can access it if they're unable to go to church because of the weather. So that's my plan. As with all things technology, sometimes plans fall apart. We'll see. Okay. All right. Well, let's then close with a word of prayer. Almighty and everlasting God, we give thanks to you that you continue to teach us your wisdom and knowledge and give us joy in life, because you are the one who has conquered sin and death, that we may live with you in eternity in your new heaven and new earth. Continue to help us look to your word. Give us joy in the things that we see. Take away those voices which turn us to darkness in our life and show us the light of your word. Father, we ask that you would be with those in need of our prayers for healing, comfort, and relief. Be with Linda, Joyce, Charlene, Bob, Carolyn, Sherry, Paula, Delphia, Linda, Gary, Jody, Rod, Court, and Betty. Be with those who work to preserve peace amongst us and give them trustworthiness and integrity in the days ahead. Be with Kurt and Corey, Roger, Christopher, Olivia, and Dalton. Finally, Heavenly Father, we also ask that you would be with our nation's leaders. Give them wisdom and integrity. Turn them from folly and madness, that we would be a people at peace and a nation that glorifies you in truth. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen. All right, everyone. God's blessings on your day. We should be having morning devotions tomorrow. It doesn't look like the snow is supposed to start until noon. So hopefully we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9.